Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Bridge HC Online. I am so glad that you could join us here on YouTube each and every week as we go through conversations that I hope are beneficial to not only your life but to your faith as well. And there are times when I look at the churches in America and I see how we portray ourselves. I see how sometimes holier than thou we can be. I also see how we are talked about by those who are against us, people who are closed-minded, people who don't believe what they preach or practice what they preach. And, I even look at my own experiences with the church, with the leaders within the church. And, the conversations I've had over the years and the hurt that I've experienced as a result, and just some of the bad doctrines that exist out there that seek to only restrict people instead of giving them the freedom that Christ offers. And I hear of how others, people who had a passion for Jesus and his church, who have left Christianity altogether because they have experienced the church's hurt time and time again throughout their lives. And when I start to look at these things and I put example after example together and I start painting a picture holistically of the church, I start to understand. I start to understand more and more what Jesus meant when he told a certain church in the book of Revelation, you have thrown aside your first love. I think that's true of us today. I think the church in America especially has cast aside, thrown away, forgotten about the very reason why we got into church in the first place, the very reason why we came to faith, the very reason why we do the things that we do, and that's Jesus Christ. Today we are continuing our Repurpose series, which takes a look at the importance of a holistic faith, a faith that impacts every part of our lives, whether that be physical, mental, emotional, relational, or spiritual, by looking directly at how our faith impacts our relationships with ourselves, with others, and ultimately with God. And if it's true that we have thrown our call to love aside, then the question that's been on my mind is, what can we do to get it back? How do we refocus our faith so that our relationships can help us and others grow closer to Christ? Now, we're going to take a deep dive into relational faith today through teaching and conversation. Now, if this is your first time joining us, I really encourage you to go back to the other Repurpose series and take a look at some of these other things that we've talked about when it comes to how our faith impacts our physical lives, our intellectual lives, and our emotional lives, okay? But today we're taking a look at our relational lives and how our relational faith should look in today's society. And we're going to do that through both teaching and conversation. And here's how we're going to do. We're going to break it down into 3 sections, as we always do. Our first section will be defining relational faith and its ties to love. Our second section then will be talking about how God, as love himself, as the very nature of love, plays a major role, in our relational faith. And then we'll finish things out in our third section by talking about practical ways, things that we can do today to strengthen our relational love by choosing love. All right, let's dive right into our conversation then with our first section, defining relational faith. And I want to start by spending some time in the text that we'll be diving into throughout our entire conversation, 1 John chapter 4. And then in this section, we're going to start in verse 7. Here's what John writes. He says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. The core of who we are as Christians is founded and defined by love. This is a valid and valuable truth for every Christian to understand. Who we are as Christians, the DNA of our Christian makeup, is founded and defined by love. It's founded and defined by God's love for us, number one, and our love for other people, number two. These are the components of defining relational faith. So let's take a moment and let's construct an actual definition so that we are all on the same terms. Here's a definition that I tend to use when it comes to relational faith. It is a proper, It is loving others through God's love for us. Relational faith is loving others through God's love for us. It's receiving God's love, and that's first and foremost. We have to receive God's love in order to love the way God has called us to love. But then it's also sharing that love by loving those around us. It is the living out of the two greatest commands of God found in the Bible. One originally found in Deuteronomy, but then Jesus teaching it in the New Testament. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then love others as you love yourself. Guys, we cannot love without God's love in our life. Not the way we were meant to love, at least. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about that in your discussion time, but just understand that we cannot love the way God has intended us, created us to love, without his love in our life. This is why John tells us that love is the basis of our faith, because not only does it come from God, because God himself is that love. Only those who have been born of God and know God can love, because he is love. Look, I would go as far to say that loving God and loving others is inseparable. You cannot do one without the other. Christianity is more than just loving God. And let me say that again. Christianity, the religion that we love, the religion that we follow, the religion that we base our entire lives on, is more than just loving God. I have to also love other people. And if I find it impossible to love those around me, to even give them the time of day, then I will find it impossible to love God. Our faith, our religion, must have room for loving other people. Otherwise, what's the point? We cannot be the Christians that God has called us to be if we hate or refuse to welcome those around us. And I'll even go a step further and say we cannot be Christians if we hate. There is no room in our religion, no room in our faith, no room in our relationship with God for us to be hateful or to even cast aside or cast out those around us, regardless of who they are. To be Christian is to live for, to live with, and to live through Christ. And the only way I can do that is by loving other people. This is how people see God. You want to talk about why people leave the church? People leave the church. People leave Christianity not because of Jesus, but because of the people that represent Jesus. And yeah, they might tell us that yes, they came to this theological understanding that went against God. But where do you think it started? It started because somebody pissed them off in the church. It started because somebody stabbed them in the back. It started because somebody in the church, somebody who was Christian or claimed to be Christian, said, no, you don't belong here. People come to believe that God is alive and well and loving within us and throughout the world because of how we love them. The proof of God's existence is seen in our ability to love others. And listen, if I, as a person, as a human being, but as a Christian, cannot love other people, then I am incapable of showing them Jesus. God showed his love through Jesus. He showed his love fully and ultimately through Jesus by sending him down to this earth, by dying on the cross, and by resurrecting from the grave in hopes that we would live through Christ, but also in hopes that we would love others as a result. Now, here's where I want to stop, and this is what I want you to think about as we head into our first set of discussion questions. If you're new with us, again, welcome. Here's what's about to happen. We are about to show you some questions, about 3 of them, and you are going to pause this video, and you are going to either reflect on them if you are by yourself, and to write out your answers and to give this some serious thought, about 10 to 15 minutes worth if you have the time and the patience to do so. Or you're going to pause this video and you're going to discuss this with the group that you have around you. Okay? If you're not comfortable sharing, you don't have to share. Don't let anybody force you into sharing something that you're not comfortable with sharing. I do encourage you to share and to give your thoughts on either the questions that are coming or what you've already heard. But just take the time to reflect and discuss. Take 10 to 15 minutes. And when you're ready, hit play, and then we'll move on to our second section. Hey guys, welcome back. I really hope you had a great discussion. Let's really quick summarize what we just went through, right? The definition of relational faith. It's loving others through God's love for us. And those two are inseparable. You cannot love God but not love others, nor can you hate others and claim to love God. It cannot happen. I cannot say that I love God while finding it impossible to love people around me. It's just not how it works. God is love. And if I'm to love other people, then God's love has to be foundational in my life. This is a crucial part of a strong relational faith. And this is why in our second section, we're going to be talking about God. And we're going to be talking about God and his role in our love. Let's continue our text from the Bible, 1 John chapter 4, and we're going to pick up right where we left off in verse 13. Here's what John writes. He says, "This is how we know that we live in him and he in us. He has given us of his Spirit. And we have seen and testify that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. If anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God." And so we know and we rely on the love that God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God in them. My love, our love as human beings, as Christians, is defined by my relationship with God. Anyone who is saved, anyone who has confessed Christ as Lord, anyone who has repented, anyone who has been baptized, anybody who has faith in Jesus Christ, anyone who is saved loves God, since God, as the definition of love, lives within us. And anyone who's saved, because they love God, loves other people. The proof of our salvation is found in our relational faith. If I don't have a relational faith, I don't have salvation. If I truly have a relationship with God, an authentic one, then I will have no problem loving those around me. John says this as much in verses 13 through 15. He says, look, the Spirit and our testimony of Jesus is proof of our salvation. And if we are saved, then we are one with God. And therefore, John continues, as saved people, we naturally comprehend our need for God's love, since God himself is love. So let me ask you, does loving others come naturally to you? And if I'm honest, and I think I can be honest on this platform, it's not easy for me, especially if somebody has hurt me, or has been a jerk to me, or is completely disengaged from what I believe. And I'm not talking about in the fact of non-Christians. Matter of fact, if I can be completely honest, the group of people that anger me the most are Christians. Other people who confess Christ like I do, but don't carry that out through their actions every other day. Yeah, those people anger me more than anybody else. And I have a hard time when somebody in the church who has hurt me or done me wrong, or anybody that I know has done them wrong. I have a hard time getting over that. I have a hard time not lashing out and not calling that person to the carpet and condemning them. But God says that I need to love them. And that love needs to come naturally to me. And it's hard. So that doesn't mean that I don't try. And nor does it mean that I'm not saved, right? If I chose to hate these people, then what John is saying in our text would be true of me. I would not have a relationship with God. I would not have God in me. I would not be saved. I'm not choosing to hate these people. I am choosing to love these people, and I'm struggling with it. And if there's anything I've learned about my faith in Christ and my relationship with God, is that God never condemns a heart that tries. And as long as I try, and as long as I submit to God, and as long as I say to God, pick up where I can, carry me over this gap of love that I cannot overcome. And as long as I do these things, I'm good. And I believe it's the same for all of us. Even if love doesn't come naturally to you, we have to choose to love others until it does. See, the answer of whether or not we can love others naturally is found in how we live out our love for other people. And ultimately, this is a question of my faith in Christ. Do I know and rely on God? Do I know and rely on His love? Do I know and rely on Jesus Christ? Because if I do, then I will show that, and then my love will show itself in the way that I interact with other people. That's the key here. That's God's role. If I want to love, I have to have God. Because it's God's love that will take over for those moments where I can't. Take a minute and pause the video and enter into our second set of discussion questions. They're about to pop up on the screen here in just a moment. And just have about 10 to 15 minutes of reflection or conversation about what you've just heard through these questions. And when you're ready, push play, and then I will lead us into our third set of conversations. Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you had a really good discussion as we talked about God's role in our relational faith. Because our relational faith is defined, our love is defined by our relationship with God. And relational faith cannot exist without God's love showing itself through my interaction with others. As a matter of fact, I would say that we cannot be saved Christians, or that we are not saved Christians, if we don't have love for others in our life. Yes, it is our faith that saves us through grace. Ephesians 2:8 is clear on that. But if there's no proof in the pudding, if I can't tell, if others can't tell that I love Jesus because of how I love them, then I really got to question where my faith is in the first place. Every day, every moment, we have the opportunity to strengthen our relational faith simply by choosing love. And that's what I want to talk about in our third and final section, the choice of love. And I want to start by finishing out our text together. 1 John chapter 4, starting in verse 17. Here's what John writes. He says, "This is how love is made complete among us so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he first loved us. And whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. Underline, highlight that verse. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command. Anyone who loves God must, underline, also love their brother and sister. This is what I love about the Bible. It does not pull any punches. It is not gray. It is all black and white. If you want to be called a Christian, if you have faith in Jesus, and you say you love God, then you better be backing that up by loving those around you, because if you don't you dare say to anybody that you love God. You know what I find about this that just really gets me excited? It's the fact that love is fearless. I have nothing to be afraid of if I love. There is no fear of hell. I have no fear of being condemned if we act like Jesus in our world by loving those around me. And as a matter of fact, there is no such thing as fear, John tells us, if our love is made complete through our faith in Jesus. Perfect love casts out all fear. Not some of it, not a majority of it, all of it. I have nothing to be afraid of. That means that my relational faith, how I interact with myself, how I interact with other people, how I interact with God, removes fear from who and how we love. You ever ask yourself the question, man, if I go and do this thing, if I show these people this kind of love, how will this be perceived? Have you ever asked that? I get asked this all the time as a church leader. Well, Larry, if we go and do this, if we go and serve this community, if we go and be Christ to these people, how are others going to look at that? And you know what my question is? I do not care. Because the question of how will this be perceived should never be a question that we entertain. Because I'm pretty sure when Jesus went and ate with the tax collectors, the prostitutes, and the sinners, the same question was asked of him. How dare he? Who does he think he is? He's Jesus. And John makes it clear that I need to live like Jesus in this world, which means that I need to go out to the people that nobody else will go to. We need to love. We need to love our enemies, our perceived enemies. If you're Republican, that means you go love a Democrat. If you're Democrat, that means you go love a Republican. If you're conservative, you love a liberal. If you're liberal, you love a conservative. It means loving people who have done us harm. That means loving the terrorists. It means loving the people who bombed us and who have hurt our people and hurt other people that we love. That means loving the rapist, loving the murderer, loving the person who is the epitome of evil in this world. Because who cares about what other people are going to think if we do it? If I walk into a bar, which, by the way, is how our church started. If I walk into a bar to evangelize and rumors start spreading that the pastor of the bridge is a drunk, I'm not. Don't care. Because that is how we should be. We need to go to the places where nobody else will go so that people can hear the gospel of Christ, so that they can be loved, because we are called to love no matter what. We're called to love without hesitation. We're called to love without conditions or without limits. We're called to love regardless of how difficult it is to love other people. Folks, love is a choice. And my ability to truly love comes from God, because his very nature is love. There is no hate within God. And so if you get angry at another group and you say horrible, murderous things under your breath, oh, I wish they were all dead anyway, and you refuse to even listen to a viewpoint that is different than yours, you have no place with God. There is no hate within God. Therefore, we cannot have hate within our own hearts. Hate and love cannot coexist. You can only have one. Love is only possible because God decided to love us first. I don't care who you are. But our example, our model for love is only found through God. Relational faith cannot contain hate. I'll say it again in case you can't hear me in the back. Relational faith cannot contain hate. Matter of fact, Christianity cannot contain hate. That's why we tell everybody, love only and love all. As hard as it might sound, regardless of how mad we might be, regardless of how disgusted we might be by the actions of other people, we must always choose to love them and to do our best to bridge that gap so that they may see God for the first time. Because love is our proof. It's the proof that God exists in this world and that he cares about each and every one of us. My ability to love others proves my ability to love God. Matter of fact, it proves God himself. And if I hate others, listen to this, if I hate others, I also hate God. If I hate others, then I also hate God. How we love is proof of how we love God. Relational faith, my faith that impacts my relationships, must be centered, focused, and founded on our relationship with God. And if I have no relationship with God, I cannot have a loving relationship with others. And if I don't have a loving relationship with others, I have no relationship with God. So simply love God. Give him everything you have. Make him your priority. Center your life on Jesus. Because I promise you, if you do, you will see what love is really all about. We're going to stop here and let you enter into your third set of discussion questions. Take a minute, 10 to 15 of them, to reflect or to conversate and to discuss all these things that we've talked about. A lot to kind of dive into. Take as much time as you need if you need more, but take at least 10 to 15 minutes. Talk through these things. When you're done, come on back, and then we will wrap things up. All right, let's quickly summarize what we've talked about so far, right? Our relational faith is loving others through God's love for us. That's the definition. It's also founded by and, defined by my relationship with God. I cannot have a relational faith without a relationship with God. And relational faith fearlessly centers itself on God and always chooses love over hate. Even when we struggle, even when we want to, it always chooses love. This is why our one thing today, the thing that I want you to focus on, if you remember nothing else, remember this. If we want to have relational faith, we have to love only and love all. Relational faith loves only and loves all. If I want my faith to impact my relationships, my relationship with myself, my relationship with others, my relationship with God, then I must choose to love in every situation I can, with every situation I find myself in, and to love everyone regardless of who they are, regardless of what they believe, regardless of what their lifestyle is, regardless of what their demographic is, regardless of what their social status is or their socioeconomic status is. No matter who they are, I must choose to love. And I get it. It's a struggle. It's hard. But nothing worth having in this world ever came easy. Struggle with it. Wrestle with it. Fail sometimes. As long as you don't ever stop. As long as you keep going. As long as you always choose love. Guys, we can love only and love all. We can love fearlessly. We can love unconditionally. And we can love without hesitation. As long as we fix our eyes on Jesus and pick up the love that we have thrown to the side. Now, maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, man, this is a lot. And I'm not exactly sure if the church can do this. I'm not even sure if Christians can do this. Shoot, I'm not even sure if I can do this. If that's you, I want to have a conversation with you, not to convince you otherwise, but to have a discussion, so I can hear you and you can hear me. Or maybe you have questions about wanting to love, you just don't know how. Maybe you struggle with hate and you just want to learn to love again. I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. Whatever questions, whatever comments, whatever thoughts that you have, you will always find a safe place here at the Bridge. And so I'm going to encourage you to either reach out to us through our social media pages, through my email, it's right up there on the screen, or by going to our website. Communicate with us. Or if you're so compelled, come and visit us on a Tuesday night. We have two ways that you can do that. You can do it online, live, or in person, live. If you come in person, we start at 6:30 with worship, and then we have a break for about 15 minutes at 6:45, 6:50, where we just allow people who are not comfortable yet with worship to come in and feel like they're not interrupting anything. And then we just talk and get to know each other over coffee, and we get situated so that we can start our conversation, the work of the night, at 7 o'clock. Now, if you're going to join us live online, as soon as worship's over, we boot up our Zoom session. It usually starts about 6:50, and you can join us via the comfort of your own home so that you can see what we're doing, what we're all about. You can hear the message, and then also you can enter into discussion with one of our leaders. Usually an elder or a leader of our church will be online leading the discussion questions with you. And whether you're here in person or online, you don't have to answer anything if you don't want to. If you say, look, I'd rather just, mute myself and listen in the entire time, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But please come. Be a part of what God is doing at the Bridge. Allow yourself an opportunity to ask questions that you may not have been able to ask in any other church before because you never had the opportunity. We pride ourselves in giving people opportunities to ask questions, to be vulnerable in a safe and loving environment. Next week, we're going to wrap up our Repurpose series by talking about a spiritual faith. What does it mean for faith to be spiritual? And in America, that might be a stretch because it's hard for us to have spiritual moments. And we're going to talk about what that is and how we can do that before we enter into our Easter series on who Jesus is. And let me tell you, if you have a misconception of Christ, or if you've been told certain things about Jesus that have driven you away from faith, this series is going to be perfect for you, because it's going to naturally talk about who Jesus actually is and how he is someone that we should love and follow rather than cast aside. All right, that does it for me, everybody. I'm so glad that you've come and joined us. I hope to see you again next week. But until then, as always, peace, love, and soul.